is at an all-time low. The spat started from South Africa's expropriation bill, which America alleges is unjust towards white South African farmers. There's no evidence for that. But also adding to the tensions is a growing relationship with Russia and Ukraine and South Africa's bid to bring allegations of genocide against Israel at the ICJ. Now, more recently, we've also seen the expulsion of South Africa's ambassador to the US, Ebrahim Rasool, as well as the USAID funding cuts. Let's try and unpack all of this in the wake of the briefing we've just had from the presidency in South Africa. Bring in now Associate Professor at the International Centre of Nonviolence, that's at the Durban University of Technology, Professor Dorcas Ettang, who's with us via our video link. Prof, thank you once again for your time and your patience. I know you've listened in with us to Vincent Magwenya as he stoically tries to drive through South Africa's posture here. They are unrelenting in mending ties with the US. He's been very careful with his language and, in fact, is warning that everybody else weighing in should not inflame the situation. Is that the best response, do you reckon, especially given the optics of what's taken place over the past couple of weeks?
Yes, good morning to you and your viewers. Thank you for this time. This is the best approach. Diplomacy has to be the sole approach in dealing with this issue. We know about all of the tensions and the statements and the emotions that have been running. And so diplomacy has to be the only tool to be used. In addition to that, it's about addressing the issues that affect many South Africans when it comes to food, when it comes to their basic needs, and so on. The world has many conflicts, many wars going on, and we do not need to add more tensions to the world. And I particularly appreciate the approach to try and use diplomatic means to engage in peaceful negotiations, peaceful discussions, and to also monitor the temperature and the timing in determining what approaches to take.
Yeah, diplomacy, of course, needs, well, let me start this way. There's a saying about how it takes two to tango. And in many ways, South Africa has been on record multiple times saying that they are willing to have a conversation. But for that to work, you need to have a listening ear. And I wonder to what extent you reckon South Africa actually has that at the moment.
I think it does. We cannot downplay South Africa's significance globally. South Africa is an important global player, not just within the African Union and SADC, but even at the level of the United Nations and globally. And so South Africa is a major player politically, economically, and so on. And so its perspectives do matter. It does have influence. We know about the relationships between South Africa and the USA when it comes to various agreements, when it comes to trade, and so on and so forth. So South Africa has a lot of playing ground in this kind of context. And in spite of that, I appreciate the ability to negotiate, the ability to take this from a very diplomatic approach. And I think Vincent also mentioned it. South Africa is an active player globally. And I think the fact that the US is still engaging in some way, is still releasing statements, releasing documents, all of this play into that role of its viability as a strong player in this scenario.
Yeah, it's also, of course, an opportunity for the country to send through a strong message. And South Africa knows all about that. The ICJ litigation is possibly a case in point, right? Taking a stand when you feel that something that ought to be happening isn't. Could this perhaps be a missed opportunity to do that with the United States? And I'm asking this as a person who has no experience in diplomacy and what really the strategic maneuvers entail. But, you can only take punches for so long, some people might say, before you need to start, drawing a line in the sand.
Yeah, absolutely. South Africa as a human rights defender, actively involved in peace building, peacekeeping, and diplomacy, and its work within the African Union and the United Nations gives a sense of a country that wants a stable world, a peaceful world. And I see that in its engagements with Russia and Ukraine as well. And I think we need those kinds of instances where we're not emotive, we're not running on emotions and posting statements and rhetorics that could perhaps create more tension. I think in issues like this, there needs to be caution. There needs to be a lot of negotiations behind the scenes. And there's nothing wrong with standing for a peaceful and amicable engagement. It's something that we need globally. And I applaud the South African government for taking that approach, because at the end of the day, who will suffer, right? Its citizens, whether they're American citizens or South African citizens, they will feel the impact of some of these decisions that are being made. And so as heads of states, that should be the focus. How do we ensure that the needs of our citizens are protected and maintained, even in our engagements with other countries and external partners?
Yeah. Is there room for any concessions, do you think? I think South Africa has, done a pretty good job at very diplomatically standing its ground, but I have to wonder how long this will be sustained in a context where we know, or at least some people have said, that the Trump administration is very transactional in nature.
Yeah, correct. This is an evolving situation, and I think to a large extent quite unpredictable. And so in situations where there's a lot of unpredictability, it is important to, take very cautious steps, have the conversations that need to be had. I believe very strongly that the South African government is engaging at multiple levels, with multiple actors within the US and beyond on these issues. This might not be public knowledge or happening in the public space, but these conversations and discussions are happening. And so this is the right approach. The right approach is to take the decisions that are being made, explore them on a case-by-case basis, and provide a diplomatic response. And I think it's important that countries learn to work together. It's key that South Africa takes this approach going forward and realizes that whether it's Ukraine or Russia or the United States, the goal is to have a diplomatic space to engage on issues that affect the vulnerable.
Yeah. We heard from Vincent Makwenya, the president's spokesperson, that Cyril Ramaphosa is inundated with people putting their hand up to take up this post, a poison chalice, as it's been described by some people, to replace Ebrahim Rasool. What would be your considered advice if you had the audience of the president about the nature of the person who should be given this task, given, of course, what's at stake?
Yes, I think it's important that it's an individual who understands the geopolitical dynamics that we are in, perhaps a strong understanding of history as well, and what's from history has created this scenario. I think somebody with a lot of emotional maturity and intelligence to be able to navigate the unpredictable circumstances posed before them, and to push forward the agenda of diplomacy and peaceful resolution of disputes and tensions, and to really engage multiple levels of actors, from civil society to the private sector, and just ensure that there's a holistic level of engagement going forward.
Absolutely. Well, Professor Dorcas Ettang, lovely speaking to you. Thank you so much for your insights and your time. I really do appreciate it. Professor Ettang is the Associate Professor at the International Centre of Nonviolence at the University, or rather the Durban University of Technology. Once again, Prof, thanks very much indeed.